All right, team. Welcome back to the Fireside PM podcast. I've got a special episode today, which is going to be a preview into a AI product strategy class that I'm actually teaching. It'll be a live class that meets every Sunday for 3 weeks starting September 8th. And it's going to be fun. But if you can't make the class, this video will give you a little bit of a taste of the kinds of stuff that we'll dig into and hopefully be useful to you even if you don't end up taking the class. So there's going to be 3 cases. We're going to dig into one, which is basically Google versus Microsoft with a little, obviously, OpenAI element to it. So it's sort of like the AI wars. The second is going to be looking at Coursera and looking at what's it like from a existing tech company's point of view that's decided to really lean into Gen AI and try and incorporate it into an existing product. And then the third is going to be a AI startup that used AI for marketing, outreach, sales, automation, that kind of stuff. So what we're going to try and do is look at AI product strategy decisions from the perspectives of giants that are down the stack, building a lot of the foundational and infrastructure work. Then we're going to look at a existing large company that's adding AI throughout their roadmap. And then we'll look at a really small venture-backed startup that's going to do sort of an AI first approach to try and take on some of the legacy players. So let's kind of just touch on the first one. We'll look at this kind of Google versus Microsoft battle. And obviously, in early 2024, there was a lot of questions around, what is Google going to do? What's Microsoft going to do? What's Facebook going to do? So this whole case is very much focused on that really pivotal moment in tech history where, for the first time in a long time, the incumbents were really shaken up. And we'll go into a bunch of questions, like, how do you think about developing AI products that could be really disruptive? Is it all good? What kinds of considerations do you have to assess depending on where you are in the market? A good example is, could ChatGPT, or, in today's terms, Google Gemini, the consumer offering, was that something that Google should have launched earlier? Or should it have launched it at the last possible minute? And why? The other thing is talking about AI research versus AI product launching and landing at scale and building things that are commercially viable. A lot of people know that Google literally wrote the paper on transformers that was the T in ChatGPT, but OpenAI was the fastest to take those innovations and turn it into a product that regular people could use. So how do you think about that if you're one of these giants now? Do you say, well, hey, let's take whatever we have on the shelf and make it as accessible as possible? Do you work on the next generation of AI? Gen AI won't be the last breakthrough. What comes after that? Who knows? How much should that be an area for investment? And then we'll talk about competitive advantage. Like, who's going to win here? Is it necessarily that the biggest model gets all the winnings, or is there commoditization risk? And, you see this already with people saying, Llama's kind of good enough. Certainly, I think that is something that Zuckerberg is betting on. So we'll do a whole case. The first class will be on the background of the Gen AI kind of wars, how we got there, and then what the big players decided to do as part of that disruption. The second class we're going to do is about Coursera. And so each of these classes, we have usually like a 10 to 20 page Harvard Business School case study. And this one is going to look at the protagonist, the CEO, launching this Project Genesis to add Gen AI into Coursera and trying to figure out, where should they add Gen AI, why, what are some of the challenges with it? And some of the questions that we'll talk about are, hey, how do we think about handling quality of the content, which, as we all know now, like is never perfect from Gen AI. There's always some little hallucinations and little tweaks that you have to make. So how do you think about that versus scaling, and often globally? If you wait till it's perfect, are you at risk of your competitors coming up with a 95% option that's good enough? The second question is, like, for Coursera, how does this impact some of their partnerships with top universities? Is this a acceleration? Does it conflict? Is it kind of neutral? And then from a business point of view, how do you structure these partnerships so that it's a win-win and provides a sustainable competitive advantage for Coursera and the other partners? So this will be, the second class is really going to go into, okay, we all know Gen AI is a big deal. There are existing players out there. I mean, we all see it today. There's AI kind of inspired stuff sprinkled across a lot of the products that we use daily. If you're on the product development team for one of those incumbents, in this case Coursera, what do you do? Is it just add as much as you can, or is it wait and see? Something in the middle? How do you decide? Then the third class is going to be about a startup called Otto that was working on outbound sales. And they were using NLP to identify prospects, compose messages, and then automate the outreach to some of those targets. So this will be an example of a startup approach. So we start the course with the big giant hyperscalers. Then we go into an existing tech incumbent, and then we look at a startup. And the questions that we'll kind of unpack a little bit around the startup are, how does that trade-off look like from the founder's point of view? Have they reached a point where it's time to exit? How do they think about their control versus potentially financial incentives? And in the case, they have a offer to be acquired by a larger player. How should they think about that? How should they think about this deal? What are their alternatives? Is it a fair offer? And then a third question is, how can a company like Otto differentiate itself when anyone with one engineer and access to the OpenAI API can do some kind of ChatGPT wrapper that could help with writing, tweets, or writing email newsletters, or writing ad copy, or creating images? If everybody has access to the same kind of, like the nuclear reactor, and everybody's just plugging into it, how do you differentiate and build a really lasting business. So if you are interested in taking a class, like it starts September 8th, all of the classes are recorded and available to enrolled students. I think it'll be a fun one. It's definitely going to be the case method. So what does that mean? That means that it's going to be very interactive. There'll be a 15 to 20 page case you read in advance. Usually takes about an hour of preparation. And then we'll have around 80 minutes of discussion. And part of the beauty of the case method is everybody's going to bring a different perspective. And these cohorts are pretty small. So you'll have maybe anywhere between 4 to maybe 8 or 9. I cap it at 12, so it doesn't get out of hand. And everybody can have an opportunity to really dig in. I'll facilitate the conversation. Obviously, I will bring a lot of perspective that I've accumulated over the years. And the class will be composed of people usually from all over the world, certainly all over the country. Often they are product managers at tech companies. Not always. There's always folks who are not in PM, but they're generally going to be interested in product and business strategy. So a typical class is we'll open the case, we'll discuss some of the observations, what we think the protagonist should do. We'll go into the background, what the options are, and we'll get some practice advocating. So if you're a PM, you know a big part of your job is being able to communicate difficult concepts and alternatives and making recommendations in a really crisp and compelling and authentic way. And so we'll do that. Then, of course, I'll share my takeaways towards the end of the class on what I thought was most interesting about the case. I don't do that at the beginning because I want to make sure everybody has an opportunity. And there's things that I learn in every class I teach. And then we'll do a AMA, Ask Me Anything, and maybe we'll touch on some new kind of AI developments that happened that week. So it's a little bit of a fun kind of catch up on what's going on in the industry. So we start with the Google versus Microsoft case on the 8th, and then on the 15th we do Coursera, and then the 22nd we do Auto. The classes are live every Sunday at 10 a.m. Pacific. The goal here is that after you take this class, you're going to have a very broad perspective on product strategy in kind of this AI era that we're in. And you're going to be able to draw from what happened with Google and Microsoft, Coursera, and Auto, and apply some of those lessons to decisions that you're making and will be making probably for years to come. So my goal is for you to be thinking about this class and years from now saying, wow, that was a really impactful class. So if you're interested in registering, spaces are limited. You can go to maven.com/TomL, and that'll show you the 2 classes that I'm currently teaching. We've got this one on AI business strategy. And then we've got one of kind of the classics that people seem to really like, which is my master class on nailing your next product review. That one I think starts in October, but you can also sign up to be on the wait list for any of these to learn about future cohorts. So hopefully this has been useful to you. For those of you who aren't able to make the class, let me give you some suggestions that I think are useful to keep in mind. The first is know that we are all observing an arms race between the tech giants, and they're kind of pot committed to Gen AI, which means that if you're at one of those companies, you're in for a battle. But if you're not at one of those companies, which is most people, you should plan and assume that kind of Cold War is going to go on for a while, and a lot of investment is going to be put into AI from their perspectives. So this is why a lot of people maybe shy away from the notion of, hey, I'm going to build a better model than ChatGPT, or I'm going to build a better model than Gemini or maybe Anthropic. There are cases for more narrow models that are particularly tuned for a vertical. I will say that in my testing, these general models are so broadly trained, but also go so deep that it is kind of hard to have a major advantage over the general purpose models at the rate that they're improving. The second thing I would take away is for the incumbents, you're seeing this already today. There's a lot of products that you currently use, and they're promoting like, oh, we just launched this new, AI feature. Most of them are not doing that well. And it's sort of like, what is it? It reminds me of when, this is dating me, but like everybody used to use like all this animation on websites and, Flash and everything. And it just got a little bit out of hand and wasn't really that useful for the job that I was hiring this product to do. And so it'll be interesting to see these incumbents try and figure out, okay, should I be adding Gen AI for helping my user create stuff, or is it for my internal team to streamline some known workflows, or is it something else? And, I think the Coursera case, we're going to unpack some of those nuances. But if you can't join the class, I would say my challenge to you is like, think about what AI powered features you can't live without, excluding ChatGPT, Claude, and Anthropic, and maybe Perplexity. Outside of those, there aren't a lot that I would say like, oh my God, that's amazing. Like maybe, I don't know, maybe some of the note-taking stuff, but even then, I think most of the value is just in the recording and the transcript, which is, not necessarily breakthrough Gen AI. So that's a question to think about. Like, how do you make sure that you're not just shipping stuff that uses AI? Of course, that's great that you'll learn that. But are you shipping stuff that uses AI that your customers now consider that feature irreplaceable and they'll never go back? That's a short list right now, but maybe I'm missing some. So let me know in the comments if you have one that you think is awesome. And then the third is around the startups. As a angel investor, I probably looked at 300-400 pitches now, just this year. And there's a lot of them that have this OpenAI wrapper vibe to them. And, my question for the startup founders out there or prospective ones is, okay, great. I know you can put together a wow demo that uses AI. Two questions. One is that wow going to be still wow after a few times that you use it? Is it really going to be kind of like that incumbent question we're asking? Is it really going to be an irreplaceable, I'll never go back capability? And then the second question is, what's going to stop some, high achieving, ambitious, Stanford CS grads to get the API keys and build their own version of what you're doing this weekend? How are you going to, and then for them, what are they going to do when a bunch of MIT juniors get to their senior year and want to add the same thing. How do we prevent this from being like a race to the bottom? So those would be, some of the things that I think are really fun about this class. Like, we're kind of watching history made, and there isn't an obvious right answer, but there are facts now on specific cases that have been documented, and we know what actions were taken. In some cases, we know some of the early results. So we can go from pure theory to really looking at some examples. And so that'll be the purpose of the class. And hopefully this episode was useful to you, whether you join or not. But if you're interested, go to maven.com/TomL. And hopefully I'll see you in a future cohort. All right, let's get back to work.